Turn away now if you fear the pull of the past. These two stories will drag you into shadows that cling too tight. They whisper from the waves and flicker in the embers, proving some loves never die. They curse. Listen if you dare, but know this. Once you hear them, they might never let you go.
Don't go near the waves when the sun bleeds red. Something waits out there. My name's Laura Hensley, and I learned that the hard way last summer on a lonely stretch of California coast near Santa Cruz. I'd just turned 40. My divorce, papers still fresh with ink from a husband who traded me for a 20-something blonde. I needed air, so I rented a flat by the beach. Nothing fancy, just a bed and a view to drown my thoughts in. That first Saturday, I sat on the sand, watching the surfers carve waves under a sky turning crimson. Then I saw him. He rose from the water like something carved from the sea itself, tall, muscled, his skin glistening with salt and sunset. His board was tucked under one arm, and his hair wet dark and wild fell over eyes that locked onto mine as he passed. I couldn't look away. He stopped, stabbed that board into the sand like a spear, and turned to me. "Some view, huh?" he said, his voice low, rough like gravel under a wave. I nodded, caught off guard by how his words felt old, like they belonged to a different time. His shorts were loud bright blue with neon streaks, straight out of an 80s movie. His slang matched gnarly, rad words I hadn't heard since high school. It was charming, disarming, and I laughed despite myself. We talked about the ocean, the sunset, nothing deep, but every word pulled me in. He was young, maybe 25, but carried himself like he owned the beach. I don't know what possessed me, maybe the wine I'd sipped earlier, but I blurted, "I'm cooking tonight. Want to join me?" He grinned, a flash of teeth against tanned skin. "Meet you at 8, he said, then grabbed his board and vanished down the shore. Back at the flat, I fumbled with pasta and a cheap bottle of red, my nerves buzzing. At 8 sharp, he knocked still damp, shirt unbuttoned, that retro vibe stronger up close. We ate, laughed, the air thick with something unspoken. The wine flowed, and soon we were closer to close. His hand brushed mine, then lingered. I felt a pull, a heat, and before I knew it, we were tangled in each other, a rush of shadows and whispers that drowned out the waves outside. It wasn't just passionate, it was alive, electric, like the ocean itself moved through us. I fell asleep in his arms, dreaming of salt and sunset. Sunday morning, I woke alone. The sheets were cold, no note, no trace, just the faint scent of sea on my skin. I told myself he'd gone back to the beach, so I went looking. The waves were calm, the surfers scattered, but none were him. The whole day passed nothing. At night, I gave up and went to a surf bar off the road, a weathered wooden place with boards hanging on the walls. I ordered a drink, trying to drown the longing when the barman served me. He was older, about 60, but the eyes, the jaw, they seemed familiar. Then I saw it, in a corner of the bar, a wooden sculpture life. It was him, the surfister, board stabbed into the base, the same smile that hooked me yesterday. My glass shook in my hand. "Who's that?" I asked, voice breaking. The barman stopped, eyes welling up. "My younger brother," he said, almost a whisper. "Jake died in 85. Drowned one Saturday afternoon, a wave took him, and he never came back." I swallowed hard. "I saw him yesterday," I confessed. "He was with me." The man looked at me, not surprised. "You're not the first," he said, voice low. "He shows up on Saturday sunsets the day he died. Some say he still surfs, still lives in that moment. But when night falls, he's gone." He pointed to the sculpture. I made that to remember him and to warn. I left the bar without finishing my drink, heart racing. That night, lying in the flat, I heard something, a soft sound, like a board stabbing the sand outside. I went back to the city the next day, but that beach changed me. I don't know if it was love or an echo lost in time, maybe both. But one thing I know, I'll never surf at sunset again. And you? Would you risk staying on the sand when the sky turns red? Think hard, he might be waiting. Santa Cruz has its legends, and Jake's one of them. Locals talk about him in hushed tones, the surfer who took on a wave too big in '85, a hot August Saturday. They say he was the king of the beach fast, fearless, with a smile that made girls stop and stare. But that wave swallowed him, and the ocean never gave his body back. Since then, stories cropped up, women who've seen him, felt him, always. At Saturday dusk, I didn't believe in ghosts until that weekend. My life was in pieces, the divorce left me hollow, like a shell tossed on the shore. But he made me feel something again, alive, wanted, even if just for a night. When he touched me, it wasn't just warmth, it was like the whole sea ran through his veins, a weight that pulled me down with him. I can't explain it, maybe it was the wine, maybe the loneliness, but I swear I felt him even after the sun rose. At the bar, his brother Sam, the barman, told me more. Jake loved that sunset, he said, wiping a glass with shaky hands. Said it was the best time to surf when the sky and sea turned into one. But that Saturday, he didn't come back. Sam pointed to the boards on the walls, all Jake's, pulled from the water after. I carved that statue for him and for the women who come in here, telling these wild stories. I walked out of that bar with a chill down my spine. Back at the flat, I locked the windows. But the sound kept coming, that soft stab of a board, faint, insistent, like he was out there, waiting. The next day, I packed up and headed back to San Francisco. But I can't forget his touch, his smile, the way the oceans seemed to call him home. Santa Cruz hides its secrets in the waves, and Jake's one of them. Local surfers avoid sunset. Now say they sometimes see a shadow in the swell, a figure with a board, always on Saturdays. I don't know if it was real or if my mind cooked it up to fill the void, but that sound, that stab in the sand follows me. Every time the sun drops, I glance out the window, half expecting to see him again. So here's the warning: never surf at sunset. Don't linger on the sand when the sky glows red. He might be there, Jake, the surfer the sea took, but never let go. And if he finds you, like he found me, you might not want him to leave. But he always does. When the sun dies, he rides back to the waves. I left that beach behind, but it didn't leave me. Sometimes I close my eyes and see him, the wet hair, the smile, the board stabbed in the sand. I hear the ocean calling, and I wonder if he's still surfing in that endless sunset. Maybe he's waiting for me or for you. So watch your step on Santa Cruz shores. The sunset might bring more than shadows. Here's the question: what would you do if he called your name? I know what I did, and I'm not sure I regret it. But one thing's for damn sure: I'm never going back to that beach. And if you do, don't look at the waves when the sun falls. He might be there, waiting, with that smile you can't shake. So here's my final word: never surf at sunset. Not because you might drown, but because something might find you. And when it does, you'll never be the same again.
Don't sleep where the embers still whisper. Some places keep their dead too close. My name's Ethan Carver, and I found that out last fall when I escaped the grind of Chicago for my uncle's ranch in northern Montana. I was 28, burned out from city life, endless emails, concrete noise. The ranch promised quiet, a chance to fish the lakes and breathe again. Uncle Ray lived alone out there, a gruff old cowboy with a spread of land that stretched into the pines. I arrived on a Friday, the air crisp with autumn, ready to lose myself in the wild. That first morning I saddled up one of Ray's horses, a sturdy bay named Rusty, for a ride through the backcountry. The plan was simple: scout the lake a few miles out, maybe cast a line. The trail wound through thick forest, the pines towering. Like sentinels, their needles carpeting the ground. I was halfway there when Rusty stumbled, a hidden hole, maybe a root. The world spun and I fell, the impact knocking the air out of me. My head hit something hard and everything went black. I woke to the crackle of a fireplace, the smell of burning wood filling the air. I was in a cabin, log walls, worn plank floors, a fogged window facing the lake. A woman leaned over me, her brown hair falling in soft waves, green eyes glowing in the firelight. She was beautiful, 30 or so, with pale skin that almost shimmered. "You fell," she said, her voice calm as the lake outside. "I brought you here." My shoulder ached, but I was alive. She introduced herself as Clara, no last name, just Clara. Said she lived there, by the lake, tending the cabin alone. There was something about her, a stillness, a presence that hooked me. She gave me herbal tea, hot and bitter, and sat by the fire, its glow casting shadows on her face. We talked about the ranch, the city, the peace of that place. Time slipped away, and I felt something grow, a spark, a warmth that wasn't just from the flames. The next few days were a blur. Clara tended me, changed the bandage on my shoulder, cooked simple stews with herbs she gathered near the lake. I didn't question how she lived there so isolated. I didn't want to know. At night, we sat by the fireplace, the flames dancing, and the space between us shrank. One night she looked at me deeper, her fingers brushing my hand. The air grew heavy and we leaned into each other, a kiss, then more, a flame that burned everything between us. It was love, fast, fierce, like time knew it was short. 3 days later, my shoulder was good enough to leave. I didn't want to go. Clara was a piece of peace I didn't know I needed. "I'll come back," I promised, holding her face as she smiled, sad but sweet. "You will," she said, but there was something in her eyes, a goodbye I didn't catch. I took the horse she said she'd found loose and rode back to the ranch. Uncle Ray met me on the porch, relieved. "Where the hell were you?" he asked. I told him everything, the fall, the cabin, Clara. He frowned. "There's no cabin out there." The next day I was heading back to Chicago. I stopped at a diner near the train station in Whitefish, a small joint smelling of burnt coffee and grease. The owner, an old guy named Hank, poured me a black cup as I spilled the story. The fall, the cabin, the woman who saved me. Hank listened, his face hardening. "That's strange," he said, scratching his beard. "There's no cabin by that lake, not anymore." He pulled out his phone and opened a photo. An old article yellowed on the screen. "There was a cabin there, sure," he went on. "Burned down 15 years ago. A girl lived in it, daughter of a buddy of mine, old Tom. Clara, her name was. The fire got her one cold night, never figured out how it started." He swiped and there she was. Clara, the same woman, same green eyes, same brown hair. My heart stopped. "That's her," I stammered. "I saw her." Hank stared at me, eyes narrow. "You're not the first," he said. "Hunters, fishermen, some, say she shows up out there looking after folks who get lost. Always near the lake, always for a few days, but she ain't alive, son. Hasn't been for a long time." I left the coffee to cool on the counter, stomach churning. Her picture burned in my mind. The smile I knew, the eyes that held me. I went back to Chicago that afternoon, but I never returned to the ranch. I'd promised Clara I would. But how do you return to a ghost? Uncle Ray called weeks later, saying Rusty never left the barn. The horse I rode back wasn't found by him. So how did I get there? I don't know, and that keeps me up at night. Sometimes I close my eyes and see her, Clara, by the fireplace, the fire casting shadows on her face. I feel her touch, the warmth that doesn't explain the lake's chill. I hear the wood crackling, or is it the echo of that fire that took her? Hank said she appears to help, but what if she's after something more? Someone to stay with her in that void. Montana keeps its ghosts in the lakes and woods, and Clara's one of them. Locals steer clear of that lake now, say they smell smoke where there's no fire, or spot a shadow by the water. I don't know if it was love or a trick of my mind, but I felt her real as the ground under my feet. And that horse, where did it go? So here's the warning: don't stay in that cabin. Don't get lost near that lake in Montana. Clara might be there, beautiful, kind, waiting to pull you into the fire that never dies. I got out, but she didn't get out of me. Sometimes I smell burning wood in my Chicago apartment and wonder if she's still calling. I promised I'd go back. But how do you go back to a ghost? Maybe she saved me from that fall, or maybe she wanted company in that endless silence. Uncle Ray's ranch is still there, but I won't return. I can't risk hearing that crackle again, or seeing those green eyes in the dark. So here's my advice. Don't stay in that cabin, don't ride alone in those woods. Clara might find you, and if she does, you might not want to leave. But she won't let you stay. Not really. She goes back to the ashes and you're left with her echo. Chicago keeps me busy, but it doesn't save me. I see her in my dreams, Clara by the lake, the fire behind her calling me. I feel her warmth, the weight of that love that doesn't make sense. And I wonder, if I go back, will she still be there? Or will I become part of that fire too? Montana hides its dead in the lakes and forests, and Clara's one of them. Locals tell tales: a cabin that burned, a girl who didn't rest. I don't know if she saved me or cursed me, but I know she was real to me. And that horse, how did I get back without it? So heed my warning. Don't stay in that cabin, don't wander off in that ranch. Clara might find you, and if she does, you might not escape. I got away, but she stayed with me, and I don't know if I'll ever shake her. Here's the question. What would you do if she called you? I know what I did, and I'm not sure I regret it, but I'll never go back to that lake. And you? Would you risk staying in that cabin? Think hard. She might be waiting. So here's my last word. Don't stay in that cabin. Not because you might get hurt, but because something might love you back from the ashes. Heed the curse. Don't let these shadows claim you too. Subscribe to Mock Mysteries Beyond the Shadows now, or their whispers will follow you into the dark. Hit that like button to break their hold, ring the bell so they can't sneak up on you, and drop a comment. Tell us which haunt you'd face if you dare escape their grip.